Hello everybody, hope you all are doing really well. I am CA Supreet Agrawal and I'm an ex-CFA India, ex-KPMG Bahrain and an India Book of Records holder. My friends, I'm going to teach you ACCA AA and AAA subjects. And today we are going to take up a very important chapter for your AAA syllabus, which is chapter number 2, that is money laundering. Now my friends, whenever I teach this subject, AAA, a lot of students expects that we are going to discuss around ISS, which is International Standards on Auditing, or topics like internal audit, forensic audit, ethics, etc. However, this chapter is quite different. This is money laundering. Now, the question that comes to the mind of a student is that why are we studying money laundering? Is it relevant for us? So yes, my friends, this is definitely very relevant for you. Let me tell you why. See, whenever you will be working as an ACCA, be it your own practice or in a job, you might be dealing with a lot of clients who might be dealing internationally. There might be a lot of transactions which are international in nature, or even if you work for an Indian client, there might be international transactions involved. And sometimes these international transactions are used for the purpose of money laundering. And that is why, as a financial expert, it is your duty. Plus, it is very much expected from you that you should understand these terms, you should understand the whole curriculum around it, and you should also help the companies to either detect it or prevent it as well. And that is why this chapter is being included in your AAA syllabus. Okay. Now, the important point is that whenever we discuss about money laundering as a chapter, everybody thinks that conversion of your black money into white money is just money laundering. But this is not it. There are multiple other aspects to it which are involved in money laundering. So let us understand each one of them in detail. So whenever we discuss about chapter number 2, money laundering, there are a lot of topics which are going to be covered here. Number one, we will be starting with the definition part, that what is the exact definition of money laundering and how many things are covered under money laundering. Okay, it's not just the conversion but other things as well. Then we will be discussing about the principal offenses, that what are the offenses, what are the non-compliances, what are the offenses which are being covered under the money laundering, which are categorized as money laundering. Then we will be discussing on each one of them in detail, and then we will be moving towards a very important topic, which is risk associated with money laundering. That is, if you or your client enters into a money laundering transaction or is convicted with money laundering offenses, then what might be the risk that you might face. Okay, then we will be moving towards the general defenses. That is, if you are accused of a money laundering transaction or a money laundering activity, then what might be the defenses that might be available to you. It is very much important for us as ACCS to know about it. Then we will be going for the most important discussion for the general life, not for the purpose of examination although, but for the purpose of general life, that how do we prevent money laundering. That is very important for us to understand. No, even if we understand money laundering to the best of our capabilities, it is not enough. We should also understand that how do we prevent it. And then finally we will be going for certain extra topics, and then we will be discussing about a very important officer, which is MLRO. This topic MLRO is very important for your examination as well. Okay. And at the closure of the discussion, we will also discuss about that what are the common questions that are being asked from these questions from this chapter and how do we answer them. Okay, although that might not be covered in today's lecture, but we will definitely cover in further lectures. Okay, so let's first start with our first topic, which is definition. Okay, so the definition says that concealment of true origin. Okay, let's understand each word in detail. Concealment of true origin. Concealment of true origin, what is the meaning of this word concealment? What is the meaning of this word concealment? So concealment means hiding. Concealment means hiding. Concealment means hiding. Okay, concealment means hiding. So concealment of true origin, that is, if you try to hide the true origin. And ownership. And ownership. And ownership. Ownership. Okay, now this and is not read as that both these conditions should be satisfied. That is not the case here. This is a general definition which is being covered over here. Okay, this is not the law definition that we study in our curriculum. Okay, now, and ownership. Okay, so either you try to hide the true origin, which is the source. Okay, true origin could be read as source. True origin could be read as source. Either you try to hide the true origin, which is the source, or ownership of criminal proceeds. Not everything, of criminal proceeds only. Okay, so there might be certain conditions that we should note down. It could either be a concealment, or hiding, or ownership, or origin, which is source, of what? Of what? Criminal proceedings. Of what? Criminal proceeds. Of criminal proceeds, not everything, of criminal proceeds. If you try to conceal or hide the true origin, which is the source or ownership of the criminal proceeds, then that is covered under money laundering. And create a legitimate cover for the sources of income. That is, if you try either to conceal the true origin or to hide the ownership of a criminal proceeds, not all proceeds, criminal proceeds, and you try to cover up with a legitimate cover, that is, you try to display it, you try to put it as a legal money, legitimate money, then it would be considered as your money laundering. So this is the definition of money laundering: concealment of true origin and ownership of criminal proceeds, and creating a legitimate cover for the sources of income, creating a legitimate cover for the sources of income, then that would be considered as your definition of money laundering. Now this especially includes certain things, which is possession. Possession, what do we mean by it? Possession, what do we mean by it? Possession. So what is the meaning of possession? That is, if you possess it, if you keep it, if it is in your custody. So what is the word here? What is the word here? Custody. If it is in your custody, or dealing as in you either trade or deal in, okay, procuring, procuring, if you try to obtain, if you try to obtain, then all of these things are also covered under money laundering. That is, it is not just the conversion. What else are included under this? If you try to conceal the source or you try to conceal the ownership of criminal proceeds and try to come up with a legitimate cover, then it is considered as a money laundering. There are certain special things which are covered. Number one is possession, number two is dealing, and number three is procuring. That is very, very important. I hope this is clear. Now let's move further. When we discuss about the principal offenses, when we discuss about the principal offenses, so there are three principal offenses that are being covered over here. Why this one has been marked as 3 star? Because this is the most important for your examination. So first important thing is your definition. First important thing that we should mark is your definition, which is being asked in the examination repeatedly. Then the second thing is tipping off. This is very important. Tipping off, which is very important. So there are principal three offenses. Number one, laundering, which is the exact laundering, conversion of money, black money, into the legitimate money, that is called as laundering. Okay. Then failure to report suspicion. What is this? If you know about the money laundering, then if you fail to report it, then is it covered? No. Even if you suspect that there might be money laundering, and if you fail to report it and later on it is found that that was money laundering, then also you are responsible here. That is very important. That has a very big scope, no? That it's not just that you were aware about it and you failed to report. Even if you suspected, even if you thought that there might be a money laundering, or there was a legitimate reason for you, there was a reasonable reason for you to think that there might be a money laundering case, and you failed to report it, that is also covered over here. Okay. So failure to report suspicion. And number three is tipping off. Tipping off. What is tipping off? Is it gossiping? That is, you are going to somebody's ears and telling it. Is that tipping off? No, that is not exactly tipping off here. There's a exact definition of tipping off which is being given over here. We will be exactly after this point, we will be discussing about each one of them in detail, and therefore we will be learning about tipping off in very short time now. Okay. Now let's discuss about stages of money laundering first. Let's throw light on this word, which is laundering first. Okay. How do we launder the money? How do we launder the money? How do we launder the money? You tell me, how do we launder the money? How do we launder the money? Is there any is there any way that you are aware about? Is there any way that you are aware about how do we launder the money? Okay, so I'll tell you one way. Okay, I'm not telling you the way to launder money, but I'll tell you that where you can suspect that there might be a money laundering transaction. Okay, so and have you watched that movie? I don't know the name of it exactly, but there was a movie. Um in that, what the hero did, what the main character of the movie did, that he obtained certain money. Okay, he obtained certain money. Say this is the box of money. He obtained certain money. Okay, This was, of course, the black money or the illegitimate money. Okay, so this was a box of illegitimate money. Okay, what he did is he distributed it. He distributed it to multiple parties. He distributed it to multiple parties. As of now, I'm marking three only, but let's assume that he distributed it to multiple parties. Okay, now these multiple parties also distributed it to multiple parties. Also distributed it to multiple parties. Okay, this party also distributed it to three other parties, and ultimately all of them were asked to deposit this money back to this person, that is in our case Mr. A. Okay, so it was later on asked by these people that you deposit the money to this person. What are these people getting out of this equation? They might be getting certain commissions, right? So this happened in that movie. Okay, now let us name this process. Let us have certain names for this process. Okay, you know, when this person distributed this money to these people, okay, you know what it was called? It was called as placement. It was called as placement. It was called as placement. Okay, it was called as placement. What is placement? When the money first enters the financial system of the country, then it is called as placement. When the black money first enters into the system, financial system of the economy, then it is called as placement. Okay, so here the person deposited this money for the first time with these people, these three people in our case, then it is called as placement. Now these people tried to segregate the money further into multiple people. Say this one person gave it to three other person, he asked them to give it to three other person. Now that is known as layering. That is known as layering. When you try to layer the transaction via multiple layers, when you try to convert the money into multiple layers so that the original source could not be identified or found, that is called as layering. And when the money finally comes back to its original source in the form of legitimate money, then it is called as what? Then it is called as what? Integration. Then it is called as what? Integration. Okay, that is very very important for us to understand. We will create a separate diagram of it and we will understand it nicely. Okay, but how do these people give back the money? So there could be multiple sources. Say there could be IPOs, there could be charity, right? There could be multiple ways through which these people can legitimately return the money to its original owner in the form of a small money, right? Now, that is the whole point of laundering. There are three stages of laundering. Number one is placement, number two is layering, and number three is integration. Okay, integration is back when the money comes back to its original source. Okay, that is stages of money laundering. Let's try to understand placement. First, introduction into the financial system of the economy, that is known as placement. First introduction into the financial system, that is known as placement. Then second, layering, that is concealing the origin, hiding the origin. That is called as the layering part. So concealing the origin via series of complex financial transactions. And finally, integration, which is reintroduction of what? Reintroduction into the financial system in the form of clean money. This is very important. Okay. Say, now let me tell you what are the common mistakes over here. A lot of students misses out on a lot of points and then they say that we have written the exact answer, but institute has not given us the marks. So let us tell you certain basic errors. Okay. First, introduction. A lot of people write introduction to the Indian economy or introduction to the country's economy, but that is not the full answer. That is not the complete explanation. So, first introduction into the financial system, that is known as placement. Second, concealing the origin. A lot of students write in the examination that concealing the origin is known as layering. But no, concealing the origin via series of complex financial transaction, that is layering. Then third, integration. So reintroduction into the financial system. A lot of students just write that reintroduction into the financial system, but that's not it. In the form of clean money. That is very very important for us to understand. So please do not commit these basic mistakes, and your answers would be perfect, and you'll get a good marks. Okay, now let's talk about the next part, which is failure to report suspicion. What happens when you fail to report suspicion? Now what is this point? This is the second principal offense. Failure to report suspicion. We have just discussed that what this suspicion means. Okay, let us write it also. Let us write it also. Okay, this word suspicion, what is covered over here? Identification. Yes, covered. Identification is also covered. Okay, knowledge of, is it covered? Yes, is that is also covered. Knowledge of is also covered. What else is remaining? If you suspect, just suspect, you do not have any evidences, suspect, then that is also covered. Let me make it a little lesser so that we understand it. The words are colliding. Okay, suspect. If you just suspect, will that work? Yes, that is also covered over here. Okay, so that is the meaning of this word suspicion. Now let us read it. Legally obligated to report suspicion. Every person, every institution, every principal, everybody, be it inside the company or outside the company, anybody and everybody, if they come to know about a suspicion related to money laundering, they are legally obligated to report suspicion to Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU. Okay, so legally obligated. It's not just that you want to report it or not. It is your legal obligation. By law, it has you have this responsibility that you have to report this suspicion of money laundering, and that is why it is covered under the offenses as well. Now, suspicion report should include, when you submit your suspicion report, there is one report by the name of SAR. There's one report by the name of SAR. Okay, when you say this suspicion report, there's one report by the name of SAR. What is included? What is the full form of this SAR? Suspicious activity. Suspicious activity report. That is called as your SAR. Okay, suspicious activity report. So this report is submitted. What does it include? It includes reporting businesses full name. Reporting businesses full name. Then identification of suspicious party. See, this is reporting business. Reporting business, that is the reporter. Okay, reporter. Who is reporting? This is identification of suspicious party. Suspicious party as in who has done money laundering. Done money laundering or suspects, or on whom we suspect that they have done money laundering. Then suspicious transaction details. Transaction details should also be done. Otherwise, anybody would blame anybody, no? Without having any details, without having anything, they might blame anybody for the purpose of revenge also sometimes. So that is why you have to deal the details as well, transaction details as well. And sometimes the transaction is not there, however there is a property which has been obtained, there is a property which has been identified as the property generated via criminal proceeds or illegal funds. So the property details in that case. Okay, so that is important over here. Did you understand this failure to report suspicion? I hope you understood it. Just in case if you did not understand it, please feel free to reach out to me in case of any queries. Okay, if you're watching this video on YouTube, you can feel free to comment. Otherwise, there would be my number available and you can feel free to reach out to me via that number. Okay, now tipping off. Now this is one of the most important points of our discussion whenever there's a question on money laundering. So generally tipping off is the most favorite question of the ACC Institute. Okay, so that is why it is very important for us to understand it. What is the meaning of tipping off? Is it just gossip? Is it just gossip that if you gossip about the money laundering, or if you go and tell anybody about the money laundering, then it is tipping off? No, it is not that. It is completely different. Okay, see, a lot of times we see that whenever there's an investigation that is going on, whenever there's an investigation that is going on, a lot of people takes interest into it, and whenever they find out any information, they just go and tell others about it. Not just others, they might tell the exact accused about it. Okay, so you might see a lot of movies where there's a raid that is going to happen. Somebody comes to the person on whom the raid is going to happen, and they come to them and they tell them that, if you offer us some rewards, we are going to give you one very important information. And you know what is that information? There's going to be a raid on you. And now assume that it is not a raid, it is an investigation of money laundering. So if you let the other person know about an ongoing investigation, not just the accused person but anybody, if you let the other person know about the current investigation or the potential investigation that is going to happen for the money laundering, then that would be considered as tipping off. That would be considered as tipping off. Now let's understand. Disclosing about an ongoing or potential investigation to whom? I have given this space so that we can write it. To whom to either the responsible party either the responsible party or anybody. If you tell them, if you disclose the details about the ongoing investigation or the potential investigation which has not yet happened, then too it is covered. Okay, both are covered, ongoing as well as potential investigation. If you disclose the details about an ongoing investigation or a potential investigation, then both are covered. Okay, to either the responsible party or anybody. That is very, very important for us to understand. I hope this must be understood now, right? Okay, so this is very important for us to understand. Now, let's discuss about the risk which are associated with money laundering. The risk which are associated with money laundering. You tell me, no? You tell me. What are the risks which are associated with money laundering? What are the risks that might be associated with money laundering? You tell me. See, if you enter into a money laundering transaction, there might be a loss of reputation. Everybody might talk about you that, this person has entered into a money laundering transaction. A lot of investigations are going against this person. So that might be one thing, loss of reputation. Sometimes you might lose the business transactions as well. Some company might not deal with you because you have a reputation to enter into money laundering transaction. That might be there, right? What else could be there? What else could be there? You tell me. Loss of reputation, loss of business opportunities, that could be there. Can there be fines and penalties as well? Yes, there could be multiple fines and penalties as well, multiple fines and penalties as well against you, right? So that is very important to understand. So number one is fines and penalties. Fines and penalties, that could be there. What is the amount? What is the amount? What could be the expected amount? What could be the expected amount of fines and penalties? Can you tell me? What would be the expected amount of fines and penalties? Anybody? Unlimited. 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 Exactly, yes. As per international laws, there could be unlimited fines and penalties. Why it is unlimited? Because a lot of countries have this provision that they might impose any penalty. And since we are studying an international syllabus, so that is why it is very important for us to understand that we have to write from a generalized point of view as well. Okay. Loss of reputation, we have already discussed. Imprisonment. Imprisonment. Who would be imprisoned? Who would be imprisoned? Company? Definitely not. Company cannot be imprisoned, right? So the responsible parties, the responsible the responsible parties, natural persons, of course, the responsible parties would be imprisoned as well. Now, what is the tenure of the imprisonment? That is not being given. Okay. Now, I hope this is clear. Now let's move to the next topic, which is general defenses. What all defenses you can, what all defenses you can give? 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 See, we are studying for triple A, so now I expect that you might be knowing about certain guesses, right? You might guess some answers, right? So yes, give me your guesses. What could be covered under general defenses? General defenses. What could be certain general defenses? So let me tell you. See, sometimes it might happen that your intention was not to launder the money. Your intention was just to help certain people, and those people legitimately, generally, legitimately, okay, with good intentions, they gave back the money to you. And multiple people were involved from multiple countries. It was looking like a money laundering transaction, but it was not actually a money laundering transaction. Sometimes, second thing might also happen, that is, you have done your part in good faith, but the other person used your trust to launder the money via you. That could happen, right? So let's understand it. Intention to report existed, but there was a reasonable excuse not to report. Sometimes we also study it in law as well, that sometimes the benefits of disclosure is not as big as the negative points of reporting. That is, the benefits are not more than the negative points. There might be more loss to the general public, to the public interest, than there would be benefit. So in that case, you might that is the difference that you might give. That is why we have not reported. Second, responsible party acted in good faith. That is, they personally acted in good faith. Good faith, without any malicious intentions, they acted in good faith. Although the other party or the overall nature of the transaction eventually converted the transaction into a money laundering transaction. But this good-hearted person was dealing in good faith without any malicious intentions. Then a report has already been submitted to MLRO. Now, who is this MLRO? Who is this MLRO? We are going to discuss it at the last, right? We discussed about that there is very important officer by the name of MLRO. We are going to discuss it at the end of the lecture. Now, how to prevent money laundering? But before that, let's have a quick revision. General defenses. What could be the general defenses? Intention to report existed, but there was a reasonable cause or reasonable excuse not to report. Responsible party acted in good faith, and report has already been submitted to MLRO, and investigation is going on, and we will report the more details as well. Now, how to prevent money laundering? How to prevent money laundering? You tell me. How do we prevent money laundering? How do we prevent money laundering? See, whenever there's any discussion that goes around how do we prevent non-compliance of any laws, how do we prevent the activities that happens in malicious intention, that happens with malicious intentions, there's always one recommendation which is given internationally, that is you set up a committee and give powers, authorities, responsibilities to that committees. Okay, so similarly here also, what you can do, you can establish AML culture. What is this AML? What is this AML? What is this AML? Anti money laundering. Anti money laundering. You can set up this culture, you can communicate it to all the stakeholders that you as a company, you as a responsible party do not want to enter into any money laundering activities, and it is your company's values that you do not support money laundering at any cost. So establish AML culture. You can set up an AML committee as well. You can set up an AML committee as well, whose core job is to look after the transaction and identify whether there's any suspicion related to money laundering by any officer, director, any employee of the company. Then appointment of MLRO. Again, MLRO discussion came, so we are going to discuss it at the end. MLRO. Okay. Now, so you can appoint one officer. This person would be the designated officer. Okay, what would be the roles and responsibilities we are going to discuss now? Then designate key person for risk management. That is, do not just give responsibilities to a person who does not have the authorities. Designate a key person. Key person. This key person might be a director of the company, might be the MD of the company, might be the chairman of the company, might be a person with significant powers in the company. So designate a key person. Designate a key person. Okay. Then implement systems for verification and record keeping. Are you aware about one term here? What is this CDD by the way? What is this CDD by the way? What is this CDD? So this CDD stands for client due diligence. What is this client due diligence? You might have heard of one term by the name of KYC. By the name of KYC, know your customer, know your client, right? A lot of banks does these things. A lot of NBFCs does these things. They ask you to update your KYC, right? That is know your customer. They ask you to update. They verify your phone numbers. They verify your email IDs. Sometimes they verify some legal documents, right? They ask you to update your KYC. Why? Because it is very important as a legal structure to have details and regularly verify those details about your clients, and that is exactly what this point is about. Implement system for verification and record keeping, not just verify but keep the records as well. See, whenever there is any allegation made, there might be a point that the investigation agencies might say that submit us the say in India they might say that submit us the Aadhaar card of that particular corporate or the particular person. Now, if the bank say that we do not have the Aadhaar card, will that work? No, because client due diligence is a mandatory procedure. So you can set up that system that you will continuously identify your client, you will continuously do the KYCs as well. Then staff education and training. That is, you should regularly train your staff, not just to identify the money laundering transaction, but to identify the process in the sense that whenever there is any activity going on, you should have the parameters of reporting the suspicions as well. Just in case you suspect that there might be money laundering, first of all, they should be trained on what is the suspicion, whenever, what are the indicators of the suspicion, and then they should also be trained about how do we report these suspicions in the company so that it reaches the appropriate personnel and the action is taken at the appropriate time. So implement system for verification and record keeping and staff education and training. That is very important. I hope this is clear. Let's have a quick rereading of it. So how to prevent money laundering? Establish AML culture, which is anti-money laundering culture. You can establish establish it via AML committees as well. Appointment of MLRO, who is that person we are going to study next. Designate key person for risk management, that is, it should not be a normal person with normal authority, it should be a key person with a lot of authorities and responsibilities. Then implement system for verification and record keeping. You should continuously identify your client and do the KYCs as well. And staff education and training, that is, you should continuously train your staff for the appropriate procedures to be done and how the escalation happens. Now, when CDD should be done, when it should be done, when KYC should be done. So when establishing a business relationship, for example, if I open a new account, they do my KYC. So when establishing a business relationship, you should do the KYC, you should do the CDD, client due diligence. Then when suspecting money laundering, whenever, see, even if they have done my KYC at the time of me opening the account, even if there is a suspicion transaction, they also call me. My bank does this. They call me up and they say that, sir, just confirm us that whether you have done this transaction or not. If I say yes, they just cut the call and they say, okay, sir, thank you. Now, why they do this? Because they need to understand that the person who is doing the transaction is the legitimate owner of the account or not. Because there could be a suspicious activity that might be going on. And it actually happened with me. I was trying to pay one of my fees in the international currency. So it was a USD currency. And as the debit happened from my card, I received a call from the bank that before we process this transaction, we need to confirm whether you have actually done this transaction or not, because it looks suspicious. So I confirmed that yes, I am Supreet Agrawal and I have done this transaction, and then only they process that transaction. And then I realized that banks, NBFCs actually does this on the regular process, in the regular process as well. Now, what are certain examples of suspicious transactions? So unusually large cash deposits. If I have deposited a big amount into the bank, I receive a call that whether you have only deposited it or there is some illegitimate source that might be, or unauthorized source that might have deposited. Then high value transaction with unknown parties. Like I told you, I was trying to transfer some good money to an international person. So they highlighted that transaction and asked me that, why are you transferring this amount, and is it you only who is transferring this amount? So high value transaction with unknown parties. Transactions inconsistent with normal business patterns. For example, I'm into the training industry. Now, if I try to buy certain things which is not at all related to the training industry, then that might result into the suspicious transaction. That might come into the category of suspicious transaction for me. Okay. Now, let's discuss about what are money laundering offenses. Sorry, what is MLRO, which is Money Laundering Reporting Officer. What is MLRO, which stands for Money Laundering Reporting Officer. So this person, Money Laundering Reporting Officer, this is the head of that AML structure generally. The AML structure, the AML committee that we have set up, generally the head of this person is called as MLRO, Money Laundering Reporting Officer. That is, if there's any offense related to money laundering, if there's any suspicious activity that is going on in the company, if there's anything that needs to be reported for money laundering, if there's any investigation that is going on, anything, all the responsibilities is given to this MLRO. This person is responsible for the overall management for the activities related to the money laundering. Let's read it. So this person is responsible for overseeing the organization's entire money laundering and counter-terrorism financing compliance efforts. That is, whatever efforts are being taken care by the organization, this person is vested with the rights and responsibilities, authorities and responsibilities to take care that whether these activities are being done correctly or not, or whether there's any change that is required. So let's have a quick revision of what we have discussed. So we have discussed chapter number 2, money laundering. We started with the definition. What is the definition? So definition is concealment of true origin and ownership of criminal proceeds and trying to cover it with a legitimate source, and it includes possession, dealing and procuring. Then we discussed about principal offenses. So the principal offenses are in the form of laundering or failure to report suspicion or tipping off. What are the stages of laundering? So number one is placement, when the money first enters the financial system. Then we discussed about layering, when it is converted into multiple layers through complex financial transaction. And then we talked about integration, when it comes back to its original source in the form of clean money. Then we discussed about failure to report suspicion. Then we are legally obligated, and what are the details that needs to be reported. We covered that. Then we discussed about a very important topic, which is tipping off. So we discussed about discussing and disclosing about an ongoing or potential investigation is known as tipping off. This is one of the most favorite questions. Then risk associated with money laundering. So there could be fines and penalties, there could be loss of reputation, there could be imprisonment. Then we discussed about general defenses. So what are the keywords that we covered over here? So there could be reasonable excuse not to report, good faith could be there, and the report has already been submitted to the MLRO that we studied here. Then we discussed about how to prevent money laundering. So we discussed about establishing the AML culture, appointment of MLRO, designate key person for risk management, implement system for verification and record keeping, and staff education and training. Then we discussed about when CDD should be done, when KYC, when client due diligence should be done. So at the start of the relationship, plus every time there's a suspicious transaction. Then what are certain examples of suspicious transactions or unusually large cash deposits, high value transactions, and transaction inconsistent with the normal business patterns. And finally, we discussed about money laundering reporting officer, who is the responsible party to take care of all the compliance efforts related to money laundering activities or anti-money laundering activities. That should be the right word. Okay. I hope this chapter is clear to all of you. Just in case if you have any doubts, please feel free to reach out to me. My name is CA Supreet Agrawal, and you can freely reach out to me in case of any doubts. Thank you so much.